Hi, this is Dairyland Frights, and this is John, your paranormal host for Dairyland Frights, a paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest. And today, I got Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are podcast. He's awesome. I listen to his podcast. If you don't listen to the podcast, you will after this episode, and check him out. He's got some great stuff he does, but I'll have him tell you about it rather than me. Welcome, Kevin. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me. It's always nice to collaborate with other podcasts and talk about these spooky topics.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many that you and me, you have over 100 episodes. I'm slowly climbing up the ranks. And you could do another, what, 100, 300, 400, and you're still not covering all what's paranormal out there, right?
Right. I mean, I don't really cover anything specific. So mine is set up in a way where I bring guests and we talk about their experiences.
Yeah.
So
Tell me about your podcast.
all right. So it's a conversational based podcast revolving around guest experiences, whether it's supernatural, paranormal, spirituality. We cover mental health because sometimes when you experience this stuff, you tend to think you're crazy, and then nothing is worse than other people calling you crazy. So it can take a toll on you mentally. And I also cover conspiracies. Conspiracies are my favorite. There's some of them that are a little kind of freaking weird. But I like them all the same. Even if I don't believe them, I still like to talk about them. Like the one that I always bring up all the time is the flat Earth theory.
Yes.
I don't 100%. I mean, some of the arguments, I'm just like, okay, I get that kind of makes sense a little bit, but I'm not a flat earther, so
neither am I,
but
brother.
I like talking about it.
Yeah. So Kevin, before we get into a little more, but let's talk about that for a second. I've seen some documentaries on it, and one of my favorite documentaries is they followed this team of flat earthers around. Maybe you saw it. I can't think of the name right now. And they were doing a scientific experiment to show the Earth is flat. And there's this camera. It's a documentary, so there's a camera crew there. And they're doing it the first time. Nope. They can't prove it. And the camera crew's like, the director's like, oh, what happened? And they're like, oh, the sun and the moon weren't aligned in the Virgo and Taurus to bowl. And there was something in my eye and I have an upset stomach. So it didn't work. Like they're making every excuse in the book, right?
Yeah.
Then they do it again at the end of the documentary, right? And they're like, this time is perfect. They tell the document, this is perfect. We're going to show you perfect conditions. And they're moving their things around and they're doing their whatever. Again, it fails. And the guy looks at the director, and this is hilarious. He looks at the director. He goes, are you going to keep that? And then it ends. And I literally fell off my chair. I was laughing so hard. Like they didn't mean to be funny. It's just like the guy was like, I've tried twice now and it hasn't worked. And I'm like flat earther. Like I'm the guy, right? Saying it's flat earth, and it didn't work both times. And
yeah.
I love it.
I mean, I haven't personally seen that documentary, but there's like a lot of like weird things that just kind of like make me go, huh? Like the fact that we see the same freaking stars every night. Like I get like stars, they're very far away, but like if we're like spinning at what miles per hour and going around the sun, and we see the same constellations every night, that one I was like, when that was presented to me, I was just like, huh. That is kind of odd. Now, I don't think that the Earth is flat, but I don't 100% think that we're just whirling around The sun, I think the sun
Okay.
orbits us, to be honest. That's kind of like what I kind of am starting to think. Like I'm
Okay.
thinking more of like we might be the center, maybe,
Mm,
possibly.
mm.
But that's just a thought, a theory. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not gonna sit here and be like, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah, right. Here we go. This is come on, told by Kevin.
Yeah,
But it's fun,
it is fun. It's
if
fun to
not
talk about.
interesting to challenge. Because if you meet a scientist, they always want to be challenged. Well,
Yeah.
certain scientists, not every scientist, but a lot of scientists want to be challenged because they've spent their years nose in a book, sitting by themselves, doing one boring experiment after the next, and it's just like you go in there and you tell them you're wrong, and they go, "This is my time, right?
My whole life has been waiting for this
My whole
moment.
life, I've done nothing but this, ha ha!" And you're just like, "I get you, buddy. Totally
Yeah.
get you." Like I'm a diehard Packer fan, so if you come in and you say the Packers suck, ooh boy, things have started. And I have my own. I have another podcast that I do just about the Green Bay Packers. And if you're a sports fan, you're a football fan. Are you at all, Kevin? Do you watch football at all?
Yeah,
Who's
I
your
do.
favorite team?
The Patriots, and we were robbed in 1998 Super Bowl
Oh,
by
there we
the Green
go.
Bay Packers. We should have won.
Conspiracy right there. Well, you lost, Kevin. But but
It was
anyway,
a good
right?
game, though. I enjoyed
It was
it.
a
I
good
was
game.
like,
It was a good game.
I think I was
Good
like
game.
in fourth grade.
Yeah, I should have you on my other podcast so I can tell you how much I hate Tom Brady. I literally like hate him so much. It's like fire comes out
Everybody
of my
does.
eyes when I don't know,
Everybody
man.
does. I love him, obviously.
I
Um,
just I can't.
he
It's
did. I
awesome.
mean, he did great. I mean, there's a whole lot of quarterbacks that were great. My buddy, a close friend of mine, was a Steelers fan, or
Hmm.
is a Steelers fan, I should say. And he hates the Patriots, and I'm like, why? As like, it's first of all, it's just a game for you to like have this much
Yeah, yeah,
hatred
right.
for
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
fucking
yeah,
another
yeah,
team. Like that doesn't
yeah,
make
yeah,
sense. They just
yeah.
pick
Right, right.
the players,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
so like I've never hated another team. Like I like the game, so that's what
Yeah.
I watch it
Right.
for. And
Yeah.
just Patriots happen to be my team. And he used to like talk shit. He's like, anybody could be great under that behind that line. And I was like, I can't remember what year it was. It was in the teens. I want to say it was like 2014 or something like that. We had the worst offensive line
Hmm.
in the NFL. And
Hmm.
Tom Brady was still putting up numbers, and I was like, "It
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
explain that." I was like, "Explain why
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
still flinging it around if
Yeah.
anybody could be great behind that line."
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And that's one thing. If you ever want to come back in the show, I can come on your show. We can talk conspiracy theories in the NFL. There's a ton of them
oh yeah,
about who wins Super Bowls, how people like have gone to NFC. But
yeah.
getting back to your show, one of the things you talked about flat Earth and everything like that. But tell me about a time where you just had a really good guest on. Do you have a favorite, or do you have some favorite topics? Because you were talking about with flat Earth. Are there any other topics where you're like, man, this guy's really interesting. I never thought about it that way, or this woman's really interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Well, I will say I can't really pick a favorite because
Sure,
they're
I
all great, and
understand.
I've become
Yeah,
friend like
sure.
you said earlier, like you've become friends with people that you've had on,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've become friends with I still check in on people that I had on in the beginning. Like I'll just be like, "Hey, how's it
Nice.
going?"
Yeah.
And I mean, the conspiracy episodes, we've covered so many different topics.
Mm.
Um, and I usually present like the topic, and then and then it kind of like
Yeah.
snowballs
Hmm.
from there. So I will do
Sure.
like the research on like a certain conspiracy or something like that. And my very first conspiracy,
Mm.
so I call them conspiracy Tuesdays. So
Oh, nice.
they're episodes that come out on Tuesday. They're just an extra episode. But now they've moved to Patreon, so only my Patreon members get to listen to those
Very nice.
episodes. But I do a
Check it out.
preview on the regular channels. I do a preview, so like you can get
Yeah.
like pieces of it and be like,
Hmm.
I might want to listen to this. But my very first one I did with a couple of my really people that I've become close with, and it was on, Black Wall Street in Oklahoma.
Yes.
And, yeah, and Bobby Shue, who is the host of Mystic Talk podcast, there was a point in time where he just like went on this like tangent, and I was so happy to have him on. Like the thing, like he just went onto this thing about like being yourself, and like just like owning like who you are, and
I love it.
just like self searching, soul searching, and stuff like that. And I think I got the most feedback from that episode out of all the episodes. I think, and I can't. It was an early episode too. That first Conspiracy Tuesday.
Nice.
So, and he's become a really good friend. I actually still got to buy his book because he just came out with a book. So
Nice.
But yeah, no, like it. I mean, everybody's great. I will say, not because of who it is, but because of what happens in the episode. I would maybe not my favorite, but an episode that intrigues me the most, it would be like episode 11. I had a gentleman named Ron on, and he's talking about the Indiana State Sanatorium, and like we were getting voices like EVPs in the background, and they were so like my voice was coming through his screen and going backfeeding through his microphone.
Yeah.
So like when I was editing, I was like, oh, I'm like that's my voice. I'm just so you're just so like in the intro, I'm just like, oh, you're just hearing my voice. Well, and he messages me probably the night that episode aired, and was like, hey, we're hearing other voices. I'm like, no, there's no other voices. It's just me. Like I get like because I'm a skeptic for the most part.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm a skeptic first. Like I will examine things until I can't prove that it was something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's how I operate. You know what I mean? Obviously, I believe in the paranormal stuff. Like I've seen shit myself. Actually, the majority of my life I've seen shit, which is why this topic intrigues me so much. But so he's like, no. He's like, they're saying things that you're not saying. So I went back and I was listening to it, and there was a point where I was I said, they don't have like there's sanatoriums back then, they don't have like records of people, like there was so much abuse and just like hidden murders and stuff like that they didn't tell you about or whatever, and like missing people. And then you hear as I'm saying that, you hear a voice go, you better run. And I was like,
whoa.
What?
Nice.
So there was a couple other things. My sister actually went through it and like documented some of the things. I forget what else there was, but there was a couple things.
So before we get to the topic and talk about a paranormal event you can share with us, have you ever interviewed a guest? And they're, like you said, they're all great, it's all interesting, but they said something where you were like, wow, that's really out there. Like anything. Is there anything that kind of just went, okay?
Not really. I mean, well, I will say Isaac, he's been on the show 3 times now, talking about his experiences and stuff. But he can capture like dark entities with like like tendrils come out of his hands. You can't see it because it's like on like a spiritual level. So when he's talking about it, I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
No, you go right ahead and swear all you want.
So yeah, I was just like, what in the world is happening? Okay. Like, because I mean, I believe him, but like when he's first telling me, I'm just like, huh?
Yeah, I'd be that way too. I'd be like, okay, and now commercial break. You know, that's funny it's funny that you mentioned that. I was interviewing a guest, and he said, like he interviews guests and stuff like that. And there was this one guest who said, well, you know that under the ocean are military or co-military alien bases. And there's these aliens who have been working with the American government who are planning a civil war. And he was like, this guy was just totally into the moment. Like he was in the groove, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he's going, oh, right. It was something that started out interesting and then just went in a left field somewhere. Just went, where are we going? Okay. And then turned into Atlantean and there's this thing and that, and he's like, okay. And and
Wow.
he said though it was still interesting, it was still fun because he said like, even if it's not true, it's still good to kind of have that conversation and go, well, back in the day, a lot of people, thought this or thought that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remember, there's how many religions and how many different things that people thought like Thor existed. The Vikings thought God existed in the heavens who hit his anvil that caused the lightning, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay. Or witches, which is a huge topic, is like, oh, my crops failed, and there's this old lady down the street, she looks
Burner.
ugly, burn her because my crops failed. Or now I can't make love to my wife, so burn her again because it's her problem, not my problem. And the most
Mm-hmm.
famous case is, I haven't covered it yet, I don't know if you have with one of your guests, but the Bell Witch. I mean, when you start looking at that again, really what you're finding out is this really yucky relationship between the father and the daughter that was maybe the whole thing behind the Bell Witch. And I'm like, yikes, okay. And it wasn't paranormal at all, but there's still people who think it still is, and I don't know, right? But the point is, it's interesting to hear that, right, from your guests, to kind of talk about that because they have wrote books or whatever you say, right?
I haven't heard anything about a disparaging relationship between the dad and the daughter, but I mean, I know they implied it in the movie just
Correct.
for Hollywood, but as far as I have heard and looked into, as in like records and stuff, they seem to have been, but who knows? You never know because it was in the
Right. You never
1800s.
know. You weren't, yeah. I mean, that's the main thing. You weren't there and stuff like
Right.
that. And that to me is really crazy. So, one of the things too, I'd like to ask you, do you have a favorite conspiracy? You kind of talked about it, about flat
Yeah.
Earth, but there's any other conspiracies? Can I tell you mine really quick?
Yeah, of course.
My favorite one is Hollow Earth. I love Hollow Earth. That the Earth is hollow, and then there's this group of, well, some people say Nazis, that the Nazis figured it out, but they're
Yeah,
supposed to be like
Hollow
these
Earth is Nazi propaganda.
right, yeah, right. But there's like other things. There's these giants down there. There's a civilization down there, and I'm like, that is so fascinating to me. And I've done some research on it, and there's like all these different scientists and other people who kind of claim, that it exists. And I'm like, what if that did exist? And these people come out, let's say they're giants. One of my favorite horror movies is called A Cabin in the Woods. And I don't
Yep.
know if you remember the plot from it, but basically they're sacrificing people to keep these gods, giants at bay. And then at the end, spoiler alert, but the movie's been out long enough, folks. The giant, whatever god, escapes. And you kind of, oh, whoa, what if that exists? What if that's true? I mean, how would you deal with that? All of a sudden, you're like getting ready for work, and you walk outside, and you're like, that's interesting. This big giant just crushing things, and you're like, huh. Well, I didn't think I'd see that this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because the Hollow Earth has a lot of the same talking points as Flat Earth.
Correct.
Like with the moon landings and stuff like that. But like
Yeah.
if Hollow Earth were to be true, like, or to be a real thing, I feel like it's just like a realm, like a portal.
Correct.
So technically the Earth wouldn't be hollow. It's just you're falling into another universe or another realm or dimension or however you put it.
Yeah.
That's where Bigfoot is.
Right.
That's where
Yeah.
he goes. That's where
There
he
you
goes
go.
on his off time when
That's
he's
his
like,
vacation spot.
yeah. He's like, oh man, I'm sick of these mushrooms out here in the middle of the woods. I gotta go back to where I came from.
Yeah. I can't. Hey, that's fine. I would do it too. Everyone's just chasing me. Leave me alone. God, people.
Oh
That's
man.
hilarious with that. So tell me about. You said you've seen a lot of paranormal shit and stuff like that. Tell me about a story, Kevin, where it kind of affected you. Like you were like, man, this one's hit me a little bit.
Shit, man. There's a few.
Okay.
that have.
Whatever one.
But I think the one that stuck with me most of my life, so I was 9, and it was 2 weeks after I had tried to take my own life.
Oh no.
Um, and I was on the swing set of and I was on the swing set in the backyard of my grandparents' house because
Mm-hmm.
we lived with them at the time. And I see something out of the corner. I was just out by myself. I see something out of the corner of my eye. I just kind of turned my head, and there's an old man sitting on the
Mm.
swing set next to me, except he's completely see-through, and he's like everything that you see like in the movies when you see a
Yeah.
ghost or
Yeah.
apparition, like
Right.
wispy, wavy, and like
Yeah.
see-through. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't have a face. It was just like a distorted mess.
Oh.
So
Oh,
I
it's.
don't know like what made me think that he was old, like he had a
Mm-hmm.
suit on,
Mm-hmm.
but not like I'm going to work or like I'm dressed
Yeah.
up. It was more
Sure.
like I'm going to work kind of
Yeah.
suit
Yeah.
and tie. And my favorite part about this guy is that he had something stringy in his hands. And I don't know what
Mm.
the hell it was, but it was either either had a yarn in his hand and he was like crocheting or knitting or something,
Okay.
or he had a bowl of noodles. And I can't remember which one,
All
but
right.
either way, it was something
Yeah.
stringy in his
I
hands.
gotcha. Okay.
And I'm staring at him,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Be patient." And I'm like, "About what?" He
Okay.
goes, "You'll know."
Yeah.
And then I was
Mm-hmm.
just like that paralysis, where
Mm-hmm.
I looked down at the ground. I wanted to run so badly,
Mm-hmm.
but I just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't make my body move. And I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there holding so tight to the chains. And I'm just
Yeah.
like looking at this one rock on the ground, and I'm just like, come on, move. Come on, move. And what felt like forever was probably
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes, maybe less,
Mm-hmm.
probably just a couple
Mm-hmm.
seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I just turned my head and he was gone. And then I was able to move and I got up and I
Yeah.
went inside.
Mm.
I didn't run, but like the whole
Wow.
time I
Yeah.
walked, I was just like kind of looking around. So like back then, I was just like, what is it? What do I got to be patient about?
Sure.
And what I think it was just like things may not like it's basically like the age old thing, like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna like things might not seem fantastic right now, but things will get
Mm-hmm.
better, and things have gotten
Yeah.
better for me. Um, I used to worry about money. I don't worry about money anymore. I used to worry
Nice.
about like about my kids. I used to worry about people liking me, and then all of a sudden I just stopped caring what people fucking think.
There you go. There you
Um,
go.
so I just
I,
I used to think that he was just like, oh, well, like I was like, if I'm patient,
uh,
maybe I'll get some candy from my mom when she
right.
stops hitting me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely love that you talked about mental health here. And I'm sorry to go on a little tangent here, but I think it's
Yeah,
important that we do this. So I suffer from deep depression. Okay. I still suffer from it. And I've tried to take my own.
sorry to hear that.
And like 5 years, Kevin, I had one of the most shittiest 5 years on the record. Like you could stack it up to people. I went
Hmm.
to jail. My wife almost divorced me. I got COVID. My friend committed suicide. I lost my job. I got in a car accident that totaled my car. And this is over a stretch, right? And
Yeah.
I'm literally like, what the fuck? What did I do? Right.
Hmm.
And it was, but like going to jail wasn't like, don't worry, I'm not an axe murderer or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm not coming to your house, Kevin. It was a disagreement between me and my wife, and nothing got out of hand. I want to share all my spooky friends. It was just a bad day. Okay.
Yeah.
My wife was angry. I was angry. I started yelling at her. She, and she got a little scared. She called the police. And again, rather than, and I don't want to go off on this tangent, but rather than the police come in and go like, hey man, calm down, go to your buddy's house and let's work this out. And they arrested me. They just arrested
Yeah.
me. And I'm like, what? Over what? Me and my
Yeah.
wife were fighting in our house. And my wife and I, right now, we're going to celebrate 25 years of marriage in September. We're great. We love each other more than ever. And it was just a bad day. Everyone's entitled to that, right, Kevin?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And people that I say to people now that I've been in therapy and I've gone through things. My therapist would always, and this is one of my greatest takeaways, and I'll share it with you in the audience because I think people have to understand this. She said, I have a terrible thing letting things go. Just terrible. Like, I will hold a grudge until I die. And my therapist said, okay, but what's the point of that? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, because they did me wrong. And then she's like, well, okay. She goes, thinking about it this way, John. Think about it as you got kids. I don't know how old
Yep.
your kids are. My kids are older. But we both changed diapers or probably, held a diaper in our hands. She goes, think of it as a stinky diaper. She goes, and think about all the stuff, the shit that you put in that diaper. Okay. What do you do after a while when you're carrying that stinky, rancid diaper? What do you do, John? And I said, well, I throw it away. She goes, there you go. That's what you got to do. Think about it that way. Think about all the shit that you're dealing with and you're just putting it in this diaper. And she's like, it's stinking, it's rancid, you're dry heaving. She says, throw it away. Now, how do you feel, John? I said, well, I feel good. She goes, there you go. Think about that. Every time shit starts to happen in your life, think about it. You keep putting it in a diaper or whatever she says you want. Maybe you're carrying around a can of shit. She goes, you keep putting that shit in there. You're carrying that can around and flies are buzzing around it and smells like shit. Eventually you're going to be like, oh, fuck this. I'm going to put this can away, right? And here, I'm going to go and I'm going to start over. Let's start over again. And that's one thing I really realized. And I think that's what a lot of people understand about mental health is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, fuck it. I don't care what you think of me. I'm my own person. I love who I am. My kids love who I am. My friends love who I am. My wife or whoever loves me. So fuck you, if you don't like me. And now, I've always been that way. I don't apologize for anything. If I make a dark joke, which I have a very dark humor, and people
I
go,
like that.
oh man, that's pretty dark. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, whoa, it's dark, man. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not, like I said,
Yeah.
I hate Tom Brady. Am I going to go and kill Tom Brady? Absolutely not. In fact, if I saw him, I'd give him a hug and I'd be like, you're the greatest. I hate you for that. And that's why I hate him, right? I wouldn't kill him, but I have thoughts of killing him. Like, what am I going to do it right? No. And
that's funny.
And like, when my friend committed suicide, it wasn't because he was depressed and was dark. He had all these, I don't know, issues with his brain, and it was just messed up. And he went to doctor after doctor, and just couldn't. The doctors were like, "I'm sorry, you're gonna live with this for the rest of your life, and the best we can do is stabilize it." And he just decided, I can't be in life just being like this, So that's a little different. And I know people out there might have, but he tried everything. He tried literally everything. And it was just to a point where, do I want to wake up every morning feeling like this? No. And, it's like,
that's rough.
Not to bum people out here for their topic, but if people are listening to this and they go, hey, man, I have a friend like that. And he's thinking on, he's talking, he's going to do this. Maybe I should talk to him and talk to a doctor, right? And before, everyone just gets into whatever. So I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that before we get to our topic at all.
Like mental health and stuff.
Yeah. Anything you talk about.
So
that.
I also, I tried twice and contemplated the third. And after the third was when I had the epiphany of the be patient, So
yeah, right.
I tried when I was 9, I tried when I was 13, and then I contemplated when I was 30. Now, I'm sure people have gone through worse things than myself, and I'm not sitting here trying to get pity or anything like that. And when I talk about it, that's not what I'm aiming for. I'm just, letting people know that, I have issues too, just like anybody else.
Right.
And a lot of it for me is just childhood trauma, and it still carries over into me now, who I am. Like I'm still working on those things.
Yeah.
Therapy never helped when I was a kid. Because I didn't feel like, mainly because, my mom was sitting right there. I felt like I couldn't actually say what I wanted to say. And then it turned into, anger management, managing my anger because I was, was angry all the time, especially when I was a teenager. Once I hit school, high school, Anybody said like somebody just even jokingly said something like, "Oh, you're fucking dumb," I'd be like, "What?" You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
and
Right.
they'd get knocked out or something like. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that because I think that I'm tough either, but it's just the way that
Yeah.
how the cookie crumbled. I was
Mhm.
always hitting people, and it actually carried over into me being an adult. Like I ended up amateur cage fighting for a little bit,
Ooh.
and I really really
Yeah.
just wanted to hurt people for some odd reason, and it's
Yeah.
mainly probably because I was hurt so much as a child,
Mhm.
where I couldn't defend myself because I was so much a little smaller
Mm.
than the aggressor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's really
but I
interesting. So go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I just want to say, like, you have to go through the storm to get to the other side.
Absolutely.
Broken crayons still color the same, so there's still
Yes.
color in you
Love
regardless.
I love it. We have broken crayons and a stinky diaper, you know, whatever. We're kindred souls because that's what I've had anger issues too, like
Yep.
really angry. But I was bullied when I was younger by other kids, and then I thought I got to get strong, so I started working out, and I just anybody, just, pow, you looked at me wrong,
Yeah.
and that carried on to my adulthood too. And now that when people challenge me, I immediately get in your face, and I'm like, okay, this has got to stop. And when
Yeah.
when I got arrested, I was like, shit. Okay, this is the final straw, and I don't mind telling people that because I want people to understand that there's a better way to do that, as well
Oh
as
yeah.
there's a way for people who are in my shoes maybe can reach out to me and be like, hey man, what'd you do after that? Like I didn't spend years in jail, or I literally spent like 1 day in jail, and I paid a fine, and I got out. It's disturbing the peace, and I don't mind telling people that because I was like, it's a misdemeanor. It was nothing, but it's good to know before you lose your cool to step back because maybe a cop will not see that as a misdemeanor next time, right? Or
Right.
something. We hear about these stories. There's good police officers, there's bad police officers, good people, bad people. But I just think it's really interesting. I think it's good that you bring that up. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
so
will
that
say real
go ahead.
quick though, because police seem to like take anything against women really seriously. When I was
Correct.
18, I had my own apartment, and my sister was living with me, and my sister was underage. And the woman downstairs came out and threatened her for some fucking reason. I don't know why.
Mm,
So
mm-hmm.
all I did was go downstairs. I said, "Hey, my sister's underage. I'd appreciate it if you didn't, threaten her." And
Yeah, yeah.
they just there was like three of them. They all started yelling. I ended up getting punched and slapped, and
Mm,
then I
mm,
punched a hole through their stainless steel grill. I didn't never
mm,
touch them. And I threw one of
mm,
their camping chairs that was on their porch. Cops
mm,
showed up, asked me what happened. I tell them, I was like, this is what
yeah,
happened. And
yeah.
then, so they bring me back to her. And he goes, you didn't tell us that you punched and slapped him. And she goes, well, he threw me down the stairs. And then frickin' the
What?
cops looked at me, and then I was like, I didn't touch her. I did not touch her. I swear to God. And then the guy that was with her was like, you need to grow up, blah, 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 blah. I was like, you need to grow up. You're the one telling the
Yeah,
cops that I did something that I did not do. I was like,
yeah,
all I
yeah,
was coming here to do was ask you to not, you know, talk shit to my underage sister,
yeah.
you
Right,
know?
right.
And then she wouldn't back down from her story, and he's like, the cop turns to me, he goes, I'm really sorry, but I need you to put your hands behind your back. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? He
Yeah,
goes,
right.
I wish I was. He's like, I believe you, but you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this. And then this woman across the street stuck her head out of her window and goes, he didn't touch either one of them. And
Oh, that's
the cop
nice.
goes, do you want to write a statement? And she goes, nope, and then shut her window. And
Oh.
I got fucking taken to fucking jail. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, like all this, I love talking about this, because believe it or not, it has to deal with people who are listening to this podcast, like you said, who believe in the paranormal, been through stuff, and the
Hmm.
paranormal sometimes, I don't know, makes you feel better. It makes you feel there's something better out there sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Now,
for sure.
this isn't one of them, though. So I
No.
set you up. So here's a
That-
little teaser. So tonight we're gonna talk about serial killers are scary. We both know that, right, Kevin? They're
Oh
scary
yeah.
people. But what happens when the home where the serial killer lived and possibly dumped their victims, are they haunted? Well, we're going to talk about that tonight, about a serial killer in his extremely haunted house. By the way, I'm here in Wisconsin. We've had two of the heavy hitters, Ed Gein, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment has been destroyed, but that would have been hella haunted. No wonder they destroyed it, because that would have been yikes. And Ed Gein's house burned down probably about 50, 60 years ago. However, I live about 2 hours away from it. I want to go to it because paranormal investigators have said when they're on that, it's just, you can look it on Google Maps. It's just this area now empty where you can look at it. The people who have been on it have been like, this isn't right, man. There's something wrong. So let's get into this. This is called Fox Hollow Farm. And this is unbelievable when you hear about this. And like Kevin, you were telling me some podcasts about it. But again, just talking through it is just like, huh? So I'm just going to start out. I'm not going to get into the serial killer because I'm not true crime. But I'm just going to kind of talk about the Graves family, which, by the way, come on, Graves family moving into a serial killer's haunted house. How perfect. That's just perfect to me. So
It is.
the Graves family moved into Fox Hollow Farm in Indiana, having no idea what was waiting for them. Okay. And one of the things, just really quick aside, when they moved into this, and it's like a mansion, it's really nice. I'll put pictures of this on my social media. And this guy who bought it was like, this is a place for my horses. I can raise horses here. I can farm here. This is going to be great, and I got it for a rock bottom price. And yes, they did know it was haunted. So if they're saying they didn't, that's not true. People did tell them there's something going on. Okay. So one of the things is I was looking at, excuse me, is a show called Paranormal Witness, and they recounted the legacy of the farm. It's a show, it's a website. It's not on anymore, the show, but they have the website. It's an older website out there, which I used one of my sources. So, serial killer Herb Baumeister. By the way, that doesn't scare me.
That right? Fucking name, dude.
Right? That's your accountant. That's right. That's your accountant. Am I right? Like,
yes.
Herb, my taxes. Did you get them done? All right, come on.
Taxmeister.
Herb, how you doing? Well, Herb, again, if you want to know about Herb Baumeister, please research it. I'm not true crime, and he is one of the worst serial killers out there. He doesn't get the credit of a Dahmer, a Gacy, and on and on and on. But he's up there, man. So he lived there, and he killed at least 13 young men before. We were talking about committing suicide, talking about that. So that kind of relates to this. So he committed suicide in the 1990s. A lot of people say he committed suicide on this property. He did not. He escaped the police. He committed suicide. He killed himself in a park in Ottawa, Canada, I believe. Not here.
Oh, he made it all the way. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, he made it all the way. And it's a bizarre story. And he made it all the way. He escaped from jail, made it all the way there. And then I don't know what happened, but he wrote a note. You can go, and like I said, you can research him. He's a heavy hitter when it comes to serial killers that people have no idea. Yeah, go ahead.
The worst part about him is that he did all this with a wife and kids in the house.
Correct.
It was the fucking worst, because he had a separate little 1-bedroom or studio thing.
Yep.
By the pool house or something like that.
Absolutely. And we'll get into that. So and he was a closeted gay man. It's like, you may joke around with your buddies or something like, you're gay. And your buddy might be like, shut up, you're gay. You might have like a weird talk.
How did he know?
And then, wait a minute, you really are gay? Like, well, why didn't you tell me? It's not a big deal, dude. But he was like that. He was like, me, I'm not gay. You're gay. Like dudes like that. You're gay. I'm not gay. Shut up. But he buried their bodies around the farm. Authorities, now this is crazy. Authorities removed more than 5,000, yes, I said it, 5,000 bone fragments around the area. I mean, I'll get into it, but it's crazy. He just thought like, hey, I'll just put it in the, what do you call those mulcher things, that with the trees, you cut down the tree and you put it in there, whatever. He didn't do that, but it's kind of like that. He's like, oh, just do this. I'm like, right?
Yeah, it's not Fargo. He didn't do he
Right,
didn't Fargo
yeah,
it.
it wasn't Fargoing it, from the ending scene where they stuff the body in there. Great scene, by the way. But the graves found, believe it or not, more. They reported seeing ghosts, hearing strange knocks, but it was Joe LeBlanc, a man who rented an apartment on the property, who had the most specific encounter. He claims to have made contact with the ghost of Herb Baumeister, even recording a session, and the voice can be heard repeating the phrase, the married one. And I'll get into Mr. LeBlanc here. Some of his stories are just really ridiculous. So LeBlanc had been asking one night who was walking in the kitchen. He was sitting there, and he was in his apartment. You're hanging out at your place, right? And what he did was, he, just to let you know too, Baumeister's victims were all single. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said. So he determined when that this was the spirit of Baumeister himself. So he was like basically walking in the kitchen, and he heard this weird stuff, and he thought he saw something, which I'll get into. And then he did this EVP that said the married one. So he thinks it's Baumeister in that apartment that is the spirit and everything. We'll see, if that's true or not. Here was I bring a little bit more, but just a little bit about Herb Baumeister. He's been subject to television shows and books and everything like that, but he's not famous. They do say he's the famous Hamilton County serial killer in Indiana. Okay. But he's been featured on Paranormal Witness. I don't know. That's on Sci-Fi. I don't think that's around. And the episode is Fox Hollow Farm, after Baumeister's property. So this is just really bizarre. So Baumeister was this Westfield businessman. And if you look at his picture again, it's the guy who does your taxes. Just think that's him. Whose authorities believe stalked Indianapolis gay bars in the mid-1990s, picked up unsuspecting men, and drove them to his property, Fox Hollow Farm, where he allegedly killed and buried them. I don't know why they say allegedly, because he did. He was considered by a suspect of the police, but, like I said, fled to Canada as investigators began digging up the backyard. The remains, of several men were found on the ground. So, again, this guy, like I said, is a really heavy hitter. And here, I just wanted to do a really quick, if you're okay with this, Kevin. I want to talk a little bit about his early life, because it doesn't seem like other serial killers where they were beaten, starved, molested, whatever you want to say. So he was the oldest of 4 children. Baumeister's childhood was reportedly normal. By the onset of adolescence, however, he began exhibiting antisocial behavior. Acquaintance later recalled the young Baumeister playing with dead animals and urinating on a teacher's desk. Okay. As a teenager, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but did not, and here's the problem that we were talking about, right? He did not receive further psychiatric treatment. So people know that there's something off about this kid. Like, okay. And they were like, you'll fix it. As an adult, he drifted through a series of jobs, but this is hilarious. He had a strong work ethic, but also he would have bizarre behavior. So believe it or not, he worked at the DMV.
Wow.
And he was a manager at the DMV. He was like high up. And he would like come into work sometimes and make these sick jokes. And people would be like, all right. But he would like work really hard. Like people would be like, oh, Herb, you got this done. Here you go. Hey, Herb, how's it going? Good. And he'd be like, fine. Just like any other coworker, working their butt off, trying to make a living. And then he would just snap. And he would say weird stuff. One of the things he did was I don't know what's with peeing on desks, but he peed on his boss's desk and he didn't get fired. People knew about it. Like he actually peed on it. And people go, that's Herb. And his boss, this is DMV government where you can literally punch your boss in the face and they can't fire you. And he didn't get fired. And he admitted it. Yeah, I peed on your desk. Why'd you do that? I don't know. I felt like it. And that was his reasoning. You just, who knows what's going on. And now I don't know if you want to add anything about peeing on desk. I never did it. Kevin, did you ever pee on someone's desk?
Never, ever.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Right? Like,
not even a forethought. No.
Yeah, I've been at a party before where I peed on a tree, but come on, we've been drinking a little too much beer, and everybody does that.
Trees are a good target.
Yeah, exactly. Or a bush. Hey, what am I supposed to do? So, to Kevin's point, he married in the woman that married him. Come on, and he had 3 children. How? What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, how does that work, Kevin? How does
it go unnoticed? I feel like a part of me, like conspiracy wise, like I feel like the wife may have known.
She had to have known. To. Because like I said, he would go in and out. He'd be like, "Hi, honey, how you doing? How was your day?" Give her a little kiss and a hug. And then, "Hey, honey, I'm going to pee on you." Or I'm going to, whatever. I'm
going to go hang out with the pool boys.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to hang out with the pool boys. The pool needs cleaning. So anyway, in the early 1990s, investigators of Marion County Sheriff's Department began investigating the disappearance of gay men in the Indianapolis area. In 1993, investigators were contacted by a man claiming that a gay bar patron calling himself Ron Rosen, I guess if you're going to make up a pseudonym or whatever you want to call it, a different name, had killed a friend and attempted to kill him. And this is Herb Baumeister, by the way. The detectives told him to contact them if he ever saw the man again. For November 19th, this gentleman called them and supplied the man's license number. After checking the license registry, investigators discovered that, like I said, Ron Rosen was Herb Baumeister. I mean, those are the 2 most boring names ever. I guess. Like, you might just call yourself John Smith. Anyway, investigators approached Baumeister, told him he was a suspect in his disappearance, and they asked to search his house. When Baumeister refused investigators, they confronted his wife, Julie, who, this is so bizarre, who also forbade police to search the house. So his wife said, "No, you can't either." And come on.
Yeah, she knew. She fucking knew.
Definitely knew. By June of 1996, which, by the way, this isn't that far away, which is crazy. However, Julie Baumeister had become sufficiently frightened by her husband's mood swings and so you've been married all this year and all these years, and you're like, now I'm frightened by his mood swings and erratic behavior. And then she filed for divorce, and then she consented to a search. So
how convenient.
Right? Yeah, okay. The search of the 18-acre, which that's crazy, 18-acre name of a Fox, like I said, Foxella Farm, was conducted when Baumeister was conveniently on vacation. It turns out they found the remains of 11 men. Only 5 to this day have been identified. And you tell me this ain't haunted? Come on, man. Duh. But like I said, Baumeister escaped to Ontario, where he committed suicide at Pioneer Provincial Park by shooting himself. And he had a suicide note. And his note, it's just this, okay. He described his failing marriage in his note and business as his reason for killing himself. Herb, I don't want to tell you how to write your note, but you killed like a lot of guys. But he did not confess to the murders.
Yeah. So interesting.
I just think that's super interesting. In addition to the murder, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was interesting.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, my marriage sucked and I didn't do, but the murders, you figure it out. In addition to the murders at his estate, Baumeister is also suspected of killing 9 more men, the bodies of whom were found in rural areas along the corridor of Interstate 70 in Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Julie Baumeister told authorities later that her husband has made as many as 100 business trips to Ohio, and what he said was store business. By the way, they had a thrift shop And that's what they had. So him and his wife owned a thrift shop, and it was successful.
Yeah.
Thrift shop actually did business, and they actually were going to open 2 or 3 more thrift shops before all this went south. I just what?
Yeah.
Like she's got to know. Like I think you said, this is going on, and she's just running this business with him, being like, yeah, okay, we're just gonna whatever. I just went into business with him, married to him. Yeah, okay. And oh, by the way, the other thing that surprised me, in their entire marriage, I think they were married close to 15 years, maybe a little bit more. They only had sex 3 times. Now, I don't know about you, but if I only had sex 3 times with my wife, or how many kids do they have? In other words, they had sex 3 times and they had a kid each time.
To have a kid, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, wow.
Strictly to procreate.
Yeah, which is scary. By the way, if anybody wonders about the kids, don't try to find them. They don't want to have anything to do with their father. They're fine. They're good kids, I guess. So that's what people say.
Yeah.
Years passed, though, and now we're going to get into, like I said, I didn't get too much into good old Herbie.
Right.
Years passed while the estate, the mansion really stood empty, and it was on the market now for really cheap. So it was sold to Rob and Vicky Graves. By the way, their kids still own it. It's still under their ownership and everything. The mansion had been gutted after it was vacated, and everything in it was new. So they just gutted everything, and the Graves thought, and this is where it goes bad. Oh, everything is that bad was gone. So they gutted the whole thing, got rid of everything, said, we're starting anew. Here we go, right? Okay. Now, everything seemed great in their new home except one day when Vicky Graves experienced an unexplained occurrence. She had attempted to vacuum up gravel from underneath a lush indoor pool. The gravel had been tracked in by the kids, but the vacuum kept on coming unplugged at the extension cord without any explainable reason for the unplugging. So Vicky was a little confused when it happened 3 times in a row. So, when you put an extension cord with everything, you might think, oh, I'm just, dang, I keep doing the damn cord out. But she didn't do that. And she claims she never did that. And she sensed, though, when that was happening, she was not alone. And that whatever or whoever didn't want her there. So she was in that pool area. And I'll get into why that pool area is really bad. So she just shrugged the feeling off. And she's like, okay, no big deal. Why does this keep getting unplugged and stuff like that, and 3 times in a row, right? So the gentleman I talked before, too, about Rob, who was working at this car dealership, like I said, he had a colleague named Joe LeBlanc, and that's the gentleman I said who has really all these crazy experiences happening, that he took that apartment. So one of the things he started talking to Rob about, this is why he moved into the apartment. Joe basically told Rob one day, hey, man, I have this terrible daily commute to work, and I'm always late for work, at the dealership here. And he said, I really need to move closer to the dealership. And so Rob said, sure, hey, I got this spare apartment on the estate. This is Rob Graves, by the way, just to clarify things. I have a spare apartment on the estate. Why don't you move in? But then Joe said, oh, just to let you know, used to be a serial killer used to be there. And Joe was like, yeah, I don't care. Totally unfazed. He's like, just to let you know, and maybe in that apartment, who knows what happened. So, he said, okay, fine. So he moved in and he brought his belongings and his dog, Fred. Hey, there we go. Cute little Fred. And he moved into the apartment. And once he got in there, he was exhausted. He fell asleep. But while he was sleeping, he dreamed he was running for his life. And I don't know if you ever had a dream where you're running for your life. He had
running, falling, all that
right.
shit.
Yeah, right. He had somebody was chasing him. So he awakened in this state of panic and he tried to run. Now, this is actually kind of funny. And so he basically woke up. Oh my God. And he's trying to run and he, bam, right into the door frame so hard that he knocked himself out. So that's pretty damn, like,
That's hilarious.
Right?
That is hilarious.
It's hilarious. Come on, people. That's funny. and he was in terrible pain. And I guess it's one of those doors, have the glass, there's the partition, and then there's glass there. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, he must have run into it so hard he busted the glass, and the glass was everywhere, and it got into his hands. And so he was like sitting there, knocked out. He's got blood everywhere. These shards of glass are in his hand, but he was unsure what he was running from. But he just knew he had to get out of that room as fast as he could. And so, they took him to, the emergency room, and he was, but everybody was like, "Oh, it's a bad dream, right? Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
But he was like, Joe was like, I don't know, man. But one day, Vicky came home, and she was coming home, and she noticed something on the corner of her eye to find Rob's painting. So he was like, I guess he had his painting, and he whatever. And this is Rob Baumeister, by the way. Believe it or not, he painted too, which is super weird. And he had a surprising amount of work that he did too. And I don't know where these paintings are or whatever. I'm sure somebody has them or whatever they are.
Oh
And
yeah.
she was looking at the painting, and she noticed there's this man in a red t-shirt standing in her yard. So she's looking at this painting, and she's looking, and she sees this man in this red shirt just standing in their yard. And then she was like, okay, that's really weird. Who is this guy? And as he turned and walked away, she realized, and this would freak me out, that she couldn't see his legs. So, and then
Yeah.
suddenly he just disappeared. They had this painting from Herb Baumeister, and she was kind of like looking at it. It doesn't really explain where they found it or anything. Maybe they just found it while they were gutting the place, but they didn't make it that clear. But I just thought the main important thing is she's looking out, and she sees this man with no legs walking away and disappearing. So now you're saying, okay, there's a man, there's some crazy stuff going on here. So Rob did the natural thing and installed security cameras on the premises in hopes in catching this guy, because they think it's just a stranger. And if he comes back, right, they can get him and call the police and everything.
And then he
So
can be like, "Look, he has legs."
see his legs, son. You were looking at some weird painting from a serial killer, and like your mind just went out. So one night while Joe was washing dishes, he heard this knock on the door, and the knocking became more insistent. So like pound, pound,
Yeah.
pound. And Joe opened the door, and no one was there. And he looked around, and okay, who knows? Maybe it's the kids playing with him, his wife. What, you don't know, right? So he said, okay, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. And he locked the door. But he could not shake the feeling of discomfort, because he felt, again, the whole thing in the Fox Hollow Farm is that. So then, again, there was more pounding. And he's like, okay, this is ridiculous. So he opens the door, nothing again. He's like, okay, all right. So this time I'm going to stand by the door like most people would. Like, I'm going to catch you this time. I know somebody's messing with me. Pounding happened again, open the door, nothing. But then I guess his dog came in there, and when he opened the door the last time, his dog just started behaving like somebody was there and started barking. But again, Joe saw nothing. And so he's like, okay. Then another night, while Joe was walking his dog Fred, he heard something in the woods. Oh boy. Okay. So Fred stopped, and his ears, you see with dogs, like I have a dog, and you see something, ears pop up, you're like, okay, what's going on? And he just heard something weird in the woods. And guess what? He saw the man in the red t-shirt again in the woods. And the stranger this time was like heading into the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
And so Joe thinks, oh, I finally got this son of a bitch. I'm going to get him this time. So Fred gives chase. Joe gives chases after the dog. They're chasing this guy, and they're trying to find this guy in the red shirt. And then all of a sudden, Joe comes face to face with this stranger. And it's this, like you were talking about a faceless guy, when you were a little kid, same thing.
Yeah.
He comes face to face with the stranger. The guy doesn't have a face. And it's just, whoa, Joe's just terrified, because this guy's not real. He knows now it's not real. It's something, some type of apparition. So like all of us would do, Joe, terrified, just turned around and ran for his life. He forgot his dog, but don't worry, his dog, Fred, chased him. Fred's okay. And then Joe came in and he told everybody, hey, Vicky, you're right. There's this guy out there. He's not a guy. It's a ghost or it's apparition. We don't know what it is. We both had seen the same man. So I was just like, okay, well, that's pretty, getting a justification for you. See, honey, like my wife would tell me, see, honey, I told you, right?
Yeah.
So then one night, Joe was again wakened by someone knocking on his door. So he called out again and no one answered. And he felt the panels in his door were like vibrating for the knocking because it was just boom, 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 boom. So Joe, pulled the door that was still shaking. He pulled it open and no one was there again. So he noticed the door knocker was raised if some unseen hand was ready to knock on it again. And let me back up here. So there was like a door knocker on the door, one of those old fashioned ones where you have to do that. So he could see it like raise up and it was like, holy shit.
I would have burned the place down. I would have ran and burned the place down. I would have been like, now.
Yep. Absolutely. And then when it came down, he heard it knock. So it was like, oh my God. So Joe, he decided, well, I'm just going to bolt this door and shut it. Okay. I don't know why. So he went back into the room to find a growling Fred. And then he heard a sound like a doorknob turning again. So again, like I said, he's sitting there. He feels that someone, when he opened the door, came in. Like he let something in. And Fred was like not having it. The other thing he saw on the doorknob was it would turn violently, like somebody's trying to get in, and trying to get into the house. And the sound stopped. And then seconds later, the door burst open and wood chips went flying across the apartment. So, again, here's Joe in this apartment. And, he's already experienced some things and this door flies open. Again, I'm burning this thing down. I mean, because he bolted it and locked it. That's what he said he did. But here's Joe again. Joe, unnerved but baffled, he just stepped out of the apartment and like, oh my God, the door slammed open. There's wood, someone basically kicked the door open. Okay, well, that's a little weird. But then he just went outside to look. I don't know what he's thinking. I'm still trying to figure this out. He saw a man inside the apartment. It wasn't the guy with the red shirt. It was some other guy. And this is what the weird thing was. He said the man was screaming and running for his life. So I don't know why he could hear the screaming. That's not clarified here. But he could see the guy like running, like someone's chasing him. So you imagine, oh my God, he's trying to get away from some unseen person. So Joe was like, hey, I think I know what this is. This is one of Baumeister's unfortunate victims. Duh, Joe, come on.
And the guy that he saw was wet, right? Like the entity that he was seeing, it was wet.
Correct. Yeah. The story varies in some things, but that's why they kind of bring Joe. Sometimes he tells one thing and he says another thing. But basically, he was wet and he's like, you see in horror movies that people are screaming and you can't hear them scream. That's what I'm thinking. Like,
same.
You see, and then you see him like running. And he was wet. Like, he'd been in the pool. So Joe, along with Rob and Vicky Graves, researched finally what was known about events on this property. And they were viewing some old news footage of pictures of Baumeister's victims. And when Joe spotted a picture of a ghost running out of the apartment. So what they were looking at is some of the different things they found of his victims. And they saw a picture of a ghost running for his life in the apartment. And Rob, just after that, became just worried that Joe might become obsessed with this case because he's seeing things now, I guess is the point. Like he's seen some strange stuff. So one day Joe was walking through the woods with Fred again, and Fred took off running, and all of a sudden something caught Joe's eye, and he dug it up, and he found a human bone. So
Yeah.
and like, oh my god! So he took it to, which is smart. He took it to Rob and Vicky, and they knew instantly that it was human, and they thought it was a femur bone. So the femur bone is their leg bone; it's the largest bone in your body.
Yeah.
So like, I just picture Fred, and I don't know why this is cute to me. Fred coming with a big old femur bone.
Look what I found. Look what I found.
And this is where the spot where they saw the man in the red shirt, which Joe saw, Rob saw, Vicky saw, and Rob reporting. Then he says, "Okay, we got to get the police involved in this because we just found a femur bone." So they reported it, and what basically they found out is, good old Herbie had killed a lot of his victims in the woods. He strangled most of his victims, by the way. So one of the things, this is hilarious to me, is they decided, okay, I just saw a bone. I saw this guy screaming. I'm freaked out. The door busted open. All these things are happening, right? So what do? Hey, I'm going to invite a friend over, Jeremy, if that's okay. So they invite this Jeremy guy over, and he knew a little about the house hauntings. And so one of the things they had him do was they said, let's go in the pool, because this is to back up here, this is where most of the victims were killed. So they bring this Jeremy and Joe, and they say, okay, I want you guys to dive in the pool, not only to look for some suspicious things, but also we have a bunch of dead beetles in the pool, and I want you guys to get that. I'm like, okay, so get the dead beetles and get see if you find any bones down there and see anything. So this is crazy. So they get into the pool, right? They go diving down to get rid of the dead beetles and also look for bones or something weird. And this is where I'm done again. I'm done like 3 times now. Joe felt someone touch his back when he's in the pool. And at first he thought it was like, okay, maybe it's the other guy in there. Maybe I bumped, someone. But he realized there was no one near him. So he felt like a hand touch him. I'm like, okay. Then he starts swimming a little bit more, and then he was pulled under the water.
Oh, fuck.
All right. And he felt these invisible cold fingers grip his neck as they were choking him. And Jeremy, his buddy, by the way, like, where's Jeremy in all this? Yeah. He looks over and he sees Joe grabbing his neck. So he's like, what the hell is going on? So, they get Joe out of the pool and everything like that. And of course, he's, freaked out, because he gets pushed, then he gets pulled under, and he looks like he's being choked by these invisible hands. But people think maybe he's doing something. Like, nobody knows what's going on. And he's like, no, it wasn't me. This is ridiculous. Okay. So the last thing with Joe was poor Joe. Well, Joe, why'd you gone? I just don't get this. One night,
I would have left.
He's working on his computer, and he hears a metallic scraping noise. And he goes over, and he finds this knife lying on the counter. All right, no big deal. And then there were these cuts in the wood walls, and it made him question, had someone been stabbed in the kitchen? Like, okay, I'm not, again, it's just so weird, his story. And so he's thinking, where's this knife? It just came out of nowhere, and like these marks on the, so someone gets stabbed in here. So one of the things he did was, and this is so dumb, he decided, okay, I think there's something going on here, Joe. There's something going on there. What are you saying this right now, right? So he took his cell phone out, and he decided to do a PEEP session, electro voice phenomena, in other words, recording, and try to find out what's going on. And that's where he got the response to his question. He was offering his questions, the married one. And also he had found out, too, that there were some people who were killed in his apartment. And he found that out later. So one of the things he always says, and this is a quote from him, which I think is hilarious. He said, "It is apparent that evil never dies. It simply changes form and continues to be a form of evil." I'm like, okay.
Well, energy
Yeah,
can't be destroyed.
right, exactly. So what's happening now is people have gone to the residents and have reported unsettling feelings, unexplained noises. They've seen apparitions, like we've said, and they even had a paranormal investigation team come out there, including psychics, a demonologist, EVP, and a visual specialist, investigated the 18-acre estate for over, this is crazy, 6 months. And most of the evidence
Wow.
the team acquired, by the way, on YouTube, The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. There's a documentary. I will put it in my links. Go watch it. It's good. It will scare you. It's like, damn, because they found all these things I would not get into, but it's just crazy. But one of the things they did find is EVP telling them to dig in a certain part of the estate. But they did not find anything. But they have a whole bunch of crazy sounds and EVPs, and oh my God. And yes, Zach Baggins has been there too. You can go back
Of
to the
course.
earliest episodes. Good old Zachy. Bagel Bites is one of my friends calls him. He's been there. There's a closet too that's there that he was actually right about. There's a closet where they found some crazy stuff in too. And they're not sure if people were murdered in this closet or what's going on in this closet, but people who have been in that closet or research to say that it's not good. So
Yeah.
one of the things too, like I said, is the documentary is much better. You can go back and watch Ghost Adventures, knock yourself out.
Aaron,
But
the ghost is touching me, not you. The ghosts think I'm hot.
I love his pants. He was just those bejeweled pants. I love that. So,
Oh my goodness.
Kevin, I always ask my guests, what do you think? Haunted, not haunted?
Well, I think it's haunted. I mean, I definitely think it's haunted. I don't think it may be to the extent that Joe has described.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a lot of wild stories, right?
yeah, but I mean, who knows? It could be to that extent. Like everything that he said could be what he had experienced, but we don't know for sure. Obviously, it was his experience regardless. But the fact that Vicky saw the guy in the red shirt, and then he saw the guy in the red shirt. But another thing too is that Joe kind of seems to have these experiences after he learned stuff
Yes,
too. That's
that's
another
right.
thing.
Yeah, and like I said, too, I believe Joe is still alive, and people have interviewed him, and he still has some stories that you're like, well, wait a
Mm,
minute, you said this, now it's this. It's like, well, what is
yeah,
it, right? I'm like, I'm sure he had experiences, maybe not to the point where he said, because like I said, having a knife out there, then seeing marks on the wood. Oh, okay, yeah. Did someone get
yeah,
stabbed there? But what was it? That knife, or was it? That doesn't make any sense to me. It wasn't like he said, "Oh, the knife fell out of the air and landed on the counter," and I was like, "Holy shit!" You know, wow, okay, right? So
yeah,
yeah, I definitely I give it a definitely a thumbs up. I think it's haunted. It has to be. By the way, like I said, the Graves family still owns it. They still live there. They don't care. Paranormal investigators still go there, still catch things, and that's I know on a bucket list of some of my friends would love to go there and check it out. Which I'm sure you
yeah.
could if
Same.
you asked the Graves. I'm sure they would probably be open because they've had so many investigators there. So before we wrap up, thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. I really appreciate it. It was
Thanks for having
awesome.
me.
Why don't you tell my spooky friends what you got coming up?
Oh boy, a lot of things. I mean,
Okay.
every week is pretty interesting. I have a vending spot at a convention coming up in June, and then I have my first speaking event coming up in September in Massachusetts. So that should be pretty fun. Kind of like been I've always been terrified of public speaking.
Mm.
But since I started the podcast, I've gotten a lot better.
Uh-huh.
So we'll see how it goes. Speaking at events about like paranormal and cryptids and stuff like that is a huge way to get,
Yes.
a following for the podcast and stuff. And
Absolutely.
so I've
Absolutely.
been given the opportunity to speak. So those are the things that are coming up other than just regular podcast stuff.
Nice. Well, it was, we're kindred souls right now. We both both have gone through some mental things and challenges and come out looking great. Again, like I tell all my spooky friends, check out Kevin where the weird ones are, and check out all his great stuff. And I will post, like I said, once this episode comes out, and definitely look forward to all the great events you have coming up. So exciting. And again, anytime you want to be on the podcast, no problem. If you ever want me as a guest, I'll definitely do it.
Would love to have you. I'm booking in July right now.
Yeah, definitely. Anything I can do. So before we wind up, we always say two things. Say hi to your ghost. Hello, ghost. Because you never know. You might have a ghost. And then we say stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great one.
You too, buddy.